Hi, everyone. My name is Georgia Reish, and welcome to another video part of the Here I Am story, my journey of healing from fibromyalgia. Now, this video speaks directly to those of you who have had very physical, painful experiences with fibromyalgia. And so I'm going to give a little bit of a trigger warning right now that this video speaks about the different pain symptoms I experienced during my fibromyalgia journey. Now, some people like to talk about their pain experiences. I've never been someone who liked to talk about my pain, whether it be physical or emotional. And actually, that's one of the things I had to work on because in my family, there was sort of a curse or I don't know, it was sort of this thing that you can't talk about your pain. And there was this silent suffering agreement that seemed to be going on, especially among the women. In fact, my grandmother, who I never met, died when before I was even born. She, I think she died when my mom was 19 or 20. She had cancer and she never told anybody until the very end. So it was this strange code. I mean, that was the first thing I learned about illnesses in our family, that my grandmother felt she had to hide her pain experience. So in my journey of fibromyalgia, learning how to express my own experience of pain was really important, not only to validate what I was experiencing, um, but to have an outlet. So, the way that I did that mostly was through poetry and art. But this video is an actual account of my pain. So I'm just letting you know right here and now. If you don't want to hear my pain, that's okay. The truth is, I have been wanting to make this video for 3 years because 3 years ago is when my remission slash recovery from fibromyalgia really kicked in after many years of doing a lot of intense healing work. So for 3 years, I have felt this need to just say it out loud what I went through. I don't need anybody to feel sorry for me. I don't need anybody to even care if you want to know the truth. Because part of the journey of fibromyalgia is learning who cares, learning who doesn't have the range to care, and mostly to care about yourself. So I picked the background of a luscious waterfall because I'm here to tell you that fibromyalgia is a journey that can be beautiful and you can move towards improvement. And if you see that beautiful waterfall in the back, you notice how it's set in a serene environment. And yet, the beauty of that waterfall can't actually take place without those different layers, like the boulders. So, the boulders in this picture are similar to the boulders of pain that I experienced and had to find how to heal with the help of professionals, medical providers, therapists, alternative healing professionals, and my own journey of self discovery. So I'm just letting you know it's possible. My healing journey spanned about, well, I'll say 20 years. I mean, it was about 3 years ago that I noticed my well-being and my energy, and it was like I was starting to feel as good as I felt prior to getting sick. And I would say right now I'm at about 90% of that person that I used to be, although I think I'm a totally different person, of course, by now. But my 20-year journey with fibromyalgia started with in 2002. And maybe in 2001, I noticed some extreme fatigue. But it is very important to say that in 2000 and 2001, I had two serious catalytic stress episodes, three. So I had my own mental health issues come up. I began the process of a divorce. I lost a job. You know, I mean, it was kind of a whole mess that happened. And it was all of those stress factors, I think, that probably triggered the fibromyalgia that had been sitting inside of me. If you want to know the truth, I think my life had been holding that syndrome, that illness, that thing they can't even find a medical diagnosis to. It had been waiting for an opportunity. And those stress issues triggered it into motion. The other thing that I think contributed to the onset of fibromyalgia was my own inability to, as I said earlier, to get help. I knew I had mental health issues. I knew to the core of my being that I had some physical issues, some physical health care issues I had to take care of. I mean, it wasn't like I was a foreigner to myself. I just chose not to. And that denial fed into my body's cry for help. So in 2002, I started to have pains and I started to have very extreme fatigue. And I had been somebody who was walking 2 to 3 hours a day and exercising. And suddenly I couldn't even make it around the block and the aches in my joints and my hips. And I kept trying to find or take long baths. I was doing all these things I thought, I don't know, that I thought my body needed, but I consciously could not face the fact that I was going into a decline. Now, for 2 years, I tried to handle it all by myself, and maybe I mentioned it to a few people. I did mention it to a couple of people who were nurses, and they said to me, this was, back in 2000, 2002. They said, do you know that there's a new disease that they're studying now and specifically impacts women, and it's called fibromyalgia? And I was like, oh, I heard about that. That ain't me. So it was my denial, which had worked previously in my life, that no longer worked. And by the time 2004 came around, I literally was not able to function normally, meaning it took everything inside of me to get up and do some basic tasks, get my kids to school, go grocery shopping. It was as if the life was being drained from me. It was as if a vampire had gotten a hold of me. And I started to get scared because I could not keep up with the things that I was doing. So a few more years went by, and maybe at about year 4, I finally had a conversation with the doctor. And thus began the journey of nobody knowing what they're doing. At that time, it was a brand new disease. And there was no way I was going to get out of being a healthy human being, So doctors attempted to kind of begin to diagnose what was going wrong with me. A lot of it is a blur because it happened so progressively. And at about year 4, I also realized that I certainly had some serious inner healing work to begin. So I had read enough books on the association between mental health issues and our physical bodies, and I'm an alternative healer. So the relationship between the mind, body, soul, energy and emotions is so intertwined. We are a whole being. And come about year 5, I could no longer deny my own inner mental health issues. But I also came to see their relationship to my overall physical sense of well being. The problem is, I started too late. Because of my neglect of my mental health and my own physical health issues, and because didn't even feel I was worthy to talk about my pain over the years, all of that accumulated, and my body's voice said fibromyalgia. Now, that voice is simply a voice of progressive breakdown. For 20 years, I went from that pains in the body to barely being able to function to 4 years in bed to a complete, utter breakdown physically. And I'll tell you about that turning point moment, which was about 15 years into my journey. So, as I began to accept the fact that I was dealing with something that was not going to get immediately better, I mean, that was the hardest thing. It's just accepting the fact that I wasn't getting better. In fact, that I was getting worse. And thus I began a journey of my own healing that involved the feedback of many different people. But at the end of the day, was a journey of healing that I alone was responsible for. In my case, I had an allergic reaction to every pain medicine they gave me. So working with pain medicine wasn't an option. And for a while, when I was very, very sick, I literally tried to start drinking. It was like, I can't do this. I'm just going to drink. Of course, I had no money. But the drinking didn't help, right? Because escapism, so it when you are in chronic pain and there is no escape, the only escape you have is here and in your heart. So I had to first accept the fact that indeed I was sick. I had to secondly accept the fact that I should not feel shame for being sick. Because in my life, as I moved from not being able to work into not even being able to function into being in bed, I had people in my life who told me I was a lazy bum, who said I needed to get off welfare. I wasn't even on public assistance then. I mean, just people who could not begin to understand that I was speaking truth about my pain. And that, of course, didn't help at all. You know, even when medical professionals don't believe you, what are you going to do? Fibromyalgia is a journey back to you and your plans for rebuilding the health of your body and mind. So, during those 4 years that I was in bed, what I went through physically is very difficult to express, but in fibromyalgia, you go through cycles, and by then I started a very predictable set of cycles. And I will just briefly tell you what it felt like, although it does not come close. So basically, about 6 times a year, I would go through, I would say, these 6 to 8 week cycles. Maybe, that would make sense. Yeah. And the cycle would start with an experience of the whole body being on fire. And I just want you to imagine what it's like to be on fire. But what would happen is that fire was in every cell of my being. On top of that, the the pain in my joints, in every joint, in every joint was, I always likened it to being sawed. Like if somebody took a saw to your arm and your joints and they began sawing, I just want you to imagine that. And it wasn't quick. Like the episodes of being on fire and having your joints sawed lasted 6 weeks. And it was like a building momentum. It would start slower and the other way I described it was during those episodes, during those 6 week episodes. I mean, when you're in that much pain, what happens is you disassociate so much. I can't even remember those times, quite honestly. And I was using CBD oil and Motrin to try to bring some comfort, but you're you're in such a state of disassociation from reality that on top of that pain, you are not in reality. By then, by year 5 or 6, my friends kind of had left me. Several of my family members didn't believe me, didn't support me. And ultimately came to work against me. You know, the things that you kind of come to realize when you're chronically ill is that you have to find out who's in your corner and what resources are in your corner. And that was the work that I had to do. So nobody really kind of knew I was going through anything because I was starting to lose a network of support and friends. So these episodes, when I went through them, they were completely isolating. It's on top of already being isolated. So it would build and it would start and it would build. I know I'm kind of going in all these areas, but that's how it feels. It's so disassociating to be in that state of pain and to be alone on top of it. So as that pain would grow, it would grow like a fever. And by week 6, I was in so much agony, laying in my bed, begging the universe to help me understand why I was here. And ultimately, over that 6 week episode period, I would end up passing out from pain. I That was the other thing that I never told anybody for a long, long time until I finally found a pain doctor that I could work with. Nobody knew that I was passing out multiple times a year from pain. And that was partly my fault because I was very discouraged about the medical community. I was very discouraged about people's responses to my experience. And I felt very, very alone in figuring out what I was going to do. Now, in the background of all of that, I want to be very honest. I was doing my work, my mental health work, because I totally understood the relationship between my mental health pain, my trauma, which, just so my upbringing and life experience included sexual abuse, sexual assault, physical abuse, neglect, and later in life, I became the victim of what they call scapegoat family system abuse. And that's online. So, basically, my whole construct had to be healed. And I decided that if my physical illness required me to do healing on my mind and my heart and my spirit, I was going to do it. And I decided to do it, to heal, to take every step I possibly could. Now, I'll let you know that along the way, several people wanted me to go on to disability. And in hindsight, I probably should have. I mean, I'm not laughing, but poverty is a layer of trauma on top of what is already going on with people with chronic health conditions. So for me, my pain was also financial. I grew up wealthy, not wealthy, but wealthy compared to many people. I had everything I wanted. I went on 1 to 2 vacations a week. I had cars, a house, and it all disappeared when I could no longer work. So the pain of the trauma of poverty was something I was unprepared for and aggravated the conditions of my illness. This would have been prevented if I would have known, but if I would have sat down with somebody early in the process and said, I'm going through something, I need help. That's just my way of saying, get help. There's no shame. So as I moved through 4 to 5 years of this extreme pain episodes, I also went through 2 other physical conditions that made it even worse, believe it or not. I developed, well, first of all, I had a fall. I had a very serious fall. And when I had this fall in a parking lot, I ended up breaking and tearing many bones and muscles in my feet. Now, if you know Chinese medicine at all, you know that the feet are the holder of many of our meridian systems. So for me to have that fall, I literally couldn't barely walk. And to make matters worse, because I was poor and ashamed, I had no health insurance. I'm a college educated woman with a degree in social work, and my shame was so high, I couldn't even get health insurance. I couldn't even let myself do that. And so for 6 months, I walked on two broken feet. It wasn't so because the breaks were all at the top of the feet and some fractures along the side. I came to learn later. And you know how I handled that? I taped my feet up with duct tape. If you take anything from this video, I want you to know that you are worthy of more than duct tape. So, as I attempted to walk and deal with these small fractures, eventually I think about 8 months after that, I did get health care because I couldn't go on anymore without getting some help, at least with my feet. The other physical condition that happened to me was what they call is I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, um, is tsetse syndrome. And it's a syndrome where the muscles of your back, the muscles that, your ribs are kind of attached into your back and they float and the muscles kind of all hold it there together in one piece. Well, that syndrome caused my ribs to pop out of my back. So basically, I would I found a chiropractor that was very generous and gave me free service for 3 years. That's how God provides. Because I would go into that session and my ribs, they weren't connected. My muscles in my back had become so atrophied that I I couldn't hold my ribs in place. So can you just imagine the pain of that? It was like being stabbed all day long. So I would go to the chiropractor and we called it the Frankenstein session because I was always trying to find the bizarre laughter in all of this. And a week later, within 2 days, 2 or 3 days, my ribs would just pop out of place. I have to tell you this though, every one of those sessions mattered. Every act of self care matters. And I worked with that chiropractor for 3 years just to get through, just to be able to walk, just to be able to get groceries for my kids, you know, just to be able to survive. After 3 years working with her, I went into another chiropractor. And it was like the universe kept providing the right healers for me because I looked With fibromyalgia, and actually, in truth, with all of our healthcare, we're the owners of it. We own our health. And I had to accept that. I had to own my mental health, my physical health, my spiritual health, and my energetic health. So I continually looked for healing experiences. And for me, because the journey was also spiritual, I asked for help, and the help was given. Along the way, I would find one healer that did that. We would barter something. I mean, I have talents. I would barter, help her do some writing of a document or something. I could still do that in my mind, thank God. So she would give me a session and I would do this. And along the way of this journey of healing, when you start to own it, you open the doors by what you seek. And along the way, healers came to help me. My biggest turning point moment, however, and there were other issues, there were some other physical health issues, but they were a little bit more subtle, and I'm still working on that. I have digestive issues that came up, which continually is teaching me the need to be aware of what I'm putting into my body. And in hindsight, I know those of you who have fibromyalgia aren't going to want to hear this because you may be in the midst of the worst of it all. But fibromyalgia saved me. I turned the attention I needed back to me and gave me 100%. Did I have to sacrifice work and money and all kinds of stuff in order to care for myself? Did my life have to change? Did my whole family system have to get rebooted and reconstructed? Yes. When your body falls apart as seriously as it does in fibromyalgia, it is asking for a new you all the way around. In 2014, I had a turning point experience. All I can say is I was going through one of my episodes. Quite honestly, the dates are a little mixed up, but I remember incidences, but I remember certain dates, and 2014 was one of them. And I was having an episode, and I remember being in the living room. I was on the couch. My kids were with their dad. That was the other thing. I had some space, which I needed. They didn't really know how sick I was. But I was on the couch in 2014, and it was Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year's. And I was having an episode, and I remember getting up and saying to myself, I think I'm going to die. I felt so gone. I could barely move, and I thought, okay, I just need to make it to the stairs. If I could make it to the stairs, I knew I could crawl up the stairs and make it to my bed. And I remember standing up, and I remember not making it to the stairs, and I passed out kind of close to the stairs. And it was such a profound robbing of energy. It was complete. And I was, in my mind, the only thing I knew what was happening to me was that I was dying. And it had been the worst of anything that had ever happened to me. And I felt my energy slipping away from me, and I decided to pray. And I asked God for forgiveness for the people that I still was hurt by. I told God how much I loved God and how much I wanted to love humanity. I went through the list of people in my mind that were held in my heart, and I let go. Now, obviously, I didn't die, but there wasn't everything in my being in that moment believed I was dying. And when I woke up, it was dark. I have no idea how long I had been passed out, but I'll tell you this. I stood straight up right away. I stood up with ease and a sense of being limber physically. And I heard a voice. I don't know if it was me or if it was angelic in nature, but the voice said, the only way you are going to overcome this is if you think about it differently. It was so clear and so loud. And then the next thought that came was, I am going to fall in love with you, fibromyalgia. I'm going to love you to death. No, it sounds dramatic, but it's true. And from that day forward, I began getting well. I began to reconstruct my experience of fibromyalgia into the waterfall. That something beautiful was going to happen in me, come hell or high water. And in the videos that I'll be making, which reflect the content of a book that I'm writing, I'm going to talk about the very simple things that I began doing. And I'll give you an example of how I began to fall in love with fibromyalgia. I began to speak to my pain, which was constantly present. I wasn't only attending to it in therapy sessions or with the doctor, I just began to have a relationship with it. It was me and the pain and nobody else. It is you and your pain and nobody else. Nobody else is coming to fix you. Nobody else is coming to save you. It's you and your pain. And I began to talk to it like it was a being. And whenever I had pain, I would say, hello, pain. Do you know how much I love you? Let's go. Let's go listen to some comedy, pain. I literally became so strange with my pain, like it was a joke, trying to play a joke on me. And mentally, I began to walk with my pain because it was trying to teach me something, anyways. I began to talk to my pain. I began to befriend. I began to not let it be bigger than me, but part of me, and own it and sit with it and give it all the love it ever wanted. Sometimes when me and my pain were at its most profound, we would go and we would just Google comedy shows and we would laugh, me and my pain. And in the owning of that, in the relationship with it, I began to tell it things as well. Like, sure, you can hang out with me today, but I just want you to know my agenda is to give you a break. And I'm going to do something different today. Oh, maybe today I'm going to go pick flowers. Pain, let's go pick flowers. I'm not lying to you at any level. Your well being is as close to you as your pain and being with it. It's like being with yourself. It just needs a little love. I make it sound simple, but this whole story of getting to the waterfall, it's 2024 right now. And this all started in 2002. And I can honestly say that at about 2 years ago, I can speak out loud the words. I am in remission from fibromyalgia. And in a few years, I plan to be completely recovered from it. And what I mean by recovery is it no longer dominates my life. Do I still have physical pains that I think might be a little bit of fibromyalgia? Yes, I have a couple of pain issues. Is it fibromyalgia? I don't know. They really don't know anything yet, do they? I find it quite sad that for a medical condition currently impacting over 15 million people, mostly women, that we still don't know anything. But maybe what we're supposed to know is that we can own and shape and create our well being again. So, with all of that being said, and all of the lessons, all of those rocks, oh, it's even bigger than I ever wanted. All of these rocks of learning, all the lessons I had to learn about self love and my family and what love really is, and partnerships and friendships and self care and self acceptance, and, all of these beautiful lessons, rocks, they may be, they create the beauty that is you, that is the waterfall. Sit with them, own them, redirect them where you can, and you will minimally find relief in the beauty that you find in yourself. I wish I could promise every fibromyalgia sufferer that they will get well, that you too can have remission, recovery. I don't know that. All I can tell you is that I did it. I did it with the help of God, with the help of broadening my mind around the healing possibilities, around what healthcare can look like in the healing journey. I did that. I chose it every day. I guess you could say I chose life, my life. And I chose to let go of the belief that my pain wasn't worthy of being attended to. So thank you for letting me share my story. I doubt seriously if anybody even made it to the end of this video. The truth was, it was a video I had to make for me to remember what I went through and survived, and to remind myself the strength that I have within. Thanks be to God. Anyways, you've got that same strength. I believe in you. Be well. And remember, the story isn't over. You have so much to create still. You have a multitude of things to create still. Bye-bye.